Welcome to Warfacts Hub. I'm thrilled to have you here as we uncover the real moments and forgotten battles of history. Today's episode takes us into the heart of Immobiles. It was Wednesday, July 27th, 1943. Before we dive into this incredible story, if you enjoy historical content like this, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us continue bringing you these amazing stories from history. Now, let's begin our journey. My name is Friedrich. I don't know how many times that night I repeated it to myself, as if the fire might steal my name if I didn't keep saying it. It was Wednesday, July 27th, 1943. Rumors had been circulating for days that the attacks were getting stronger, but people get used to everything, even to sirens, until they become the only sound separating life from death. That evening, the air was thick and unnaturally hot for Hamburg. It smelled like smoke from distant factories, mixed with a sweet, stale odor, as if the city had already been burning on the inside for days. We had taped the windows in crosses to stop the glass from shattering. In the hallway stood a bucket of sand and a long hooked pole for grabbing incendiary bombs. That was our line of defense. A bucket of sand and a neighbor's pact that everyone would be on the roof with water buckets if needed. We all knew Luftschutz's rules. Water for normal flames, sand for phosphorus. We knew it, but no one truly believed those drops of white death would fall on our own roof. I was sitting at the table writing down expenses, a stubborn ritual of normal life. At 21:45, far to the west, a deep rumble began. Some would call it thunder, but thunder doesn't grow in layers like that, like the sky filling with metallic bubbles. At 22, the sirens woke up. First the long Hilton, the endless rising howl. I stopped in the middle of the room. Through a slit in the curtains, I could see green and yellow flashes reflecting in the glass. Pathfinders, British target markers. They were drawing their cold geometry over my city. "Down to the cellar," I shouted. Neighbors were already on the stairs. Mrs. Adler carried her cat wrapped in a towel. Little Eric was barefoot. He had forgotten his shoes. My notebook and pencil remained open on the table. I didn't have the heart to close it. It felt like even the click of the cover might call the bomb faster. The basement smelled like damp earth, potatoes, and old iron. Along the wall, benches, bottles of water, a few candles, several gas masks. White chalk arrows pointed to the escape holes if the building collapsed. Someone prayed. Someone joked with the trembling voice of a man trying to trick his own fear. I stood near the door and listened to the rumble change. It became an entire sea of engines, like a wave that doesn't hit once but holds you under and waits for you to drown. The first wave arrived like steel rain, not the heavy, deafening blasts, but fine crackling like someone scattering metal grains across rooftops. Incendiary bombs, small, countless, mercilessly efficient. Above us, shattering glass, angry whistles, and small blue flames biting into attics. Someone yelled to get to the roof. Another pulled him back, too soon. But the rules were clear. If incendiaries get established, there is no house left by morning. We ran upward anyway, stairs trembling, dust falling in soft clumps. On the top landing, we put on caps and damp cloths over our mouths. The attic shimmered like a sky full of stars, but these stars were bluish, white, even green as phosphorus caught the beams. It hissed and dripped, forming tiny pools of hell. "Sand, more sand," Otto yelled. We smothered them, crushed them, shoveled them, turned them over with metal hooks. Through the shattered attic window, I saw the gunpowder flowers above the roofs, the British marking flares, the wide circles of green trees hanging in the air, dripping sparks. Terrifying, strangely beautiful, like watching a storm from a sinking ship. Then came the heavy bombs. You feel them in your knees before you hear them. A low vacuum, then the strike. Tiles sliding like cards, walls folding like paper, my mouth filled with grit. My eyes burned. Eric's father shoved another shovel of sand into my hands. "Take it," he yelled. I tried to speak, but my throat rasped. Smoke had already found its way inside me. Back in the basement, the air had changed. Hotter, heavier. Women soaked cloths in a basin and pressed them to their mouths. Somebody turned on the radio. A rasping voice talked about isolated raids and stay calm. But above our heads, that wasn't isolated. It was machinery, a mechanism that had come to finish the job. As night went deeper, the world above became an endless forge. The sky glowed through ventilation slits like embers beneath a lid. Then came the wind. Not a breeze, a pull, a sucking force. Air rushing towards the fire. Someone whispered the word I didn't want to hear. Feuerstorm, firestorm. Doors in distant basements slammed open and shut by themselves, as if an invisible giant was yanking them. People clamped their hands around the handles. Oxygen fled through every crack. The smell changed, no longer wood smoke, but a metallic, sickly sweetness. Later I would learn that was tar, oil, flesh. Children cried without tears. Their eyes were too dry. Someone said we should run toward the water, toward the Ulster. We had been taught that plan. If the firestorm comes, head to water, don't run, don't panic, breathe through wet cloths. But who can not panic when an entire city is trying to inhale itself? We went anyway. Mrs. Adler clutching her cat. Otto, his hands the color of ash. Old Herr Beck insisting on taking his papers and keys, as if tomorrow he would simply unlock his door and stop for bread. I took a canister of water and an army blanket. We opened the door and the world slapped us. The air was hot, thick, like you could slice it with a knife. Where were the streets? Flames leapt from roof to roof like wild animals. The wind was not wind, it was suction. Papers, sparks, canvas, oxygen, everything flew in one direction, out of our lungs. We crouched low and covered our mouths. Somewhere a water pipe burst. It thundered like a cannon. I saw a man run, then suddenly fall. The firestorm had yanked him off his feet. Trees all leaned in one direction, like hair blown back in a hurricane. In Hamburg and Rothenburg sort, the flames formed tunnels. The asphalt melted and whispered as it bubbled. A woman screamed because her shoelaces caught fire. We threw water on her, but the water turned hot on her skin instantly. Phosphorus flickered like tiny vampires on the street. Step on one, and it popped and lit again a few meters away. Otto smashed them with sand, but the sand was almost gone. Near a canal, people already lay half in the water, their clothes steaming. Someone shouted, "Into the water," but the water was full of debris, oil, timbers. A boy slipped in. The suction pulled his face against an oily film. We dragged him back. His eyes were ghost white from smoke. "Breathe through this," Mrs. Adler told him, pressing a wet cloth to his mouth. The sound he made was like a broken harmonica. We stumbled down Glockengießer Wall, moving by instinct. Water equals life. A Luftschutz warden met us at the corner, skin blackened, eyes shining like polished stones. "You can't go right, everything closed," he yelled. "Go toward the Binnenalster." His hands trembled, but his voice was a rope for all of us. We didn't walk. We slid through air that wanted to be fire. Heat was so intense that even old abandoned bicycles had their tires melted into black tongues. A building slowly folded in on itself, revealing a dining table, a bookshelf, a little girl's photo, then a strip of black smoke. A cloud of letters burst upward, fragments of someone's life. I tried to catch one. It fell apart in my hand. All I saw was "Dear Louise" before it turned to gray dust. We were small inside this giant chimney of a street. Sound wasn't explosions anymore. It was the steady roar of a monstrous organ made of fire. I held Mrs. Adler's elbow. She said something, but I heard nothing. I just mouthed, "Hold on, a little more." Armies, maps, strategies, none of that mattered anymore. War became tiny. It became one command: keep moving. At the bridge, sky and water fought each other. A warehouse roof burned, and sparks rained onto the canal like drowned stars. Some people stood waist-deep in the water, holding children above their heads. The water was warm. Steam rose as if someone had poured boiling tea across the surface. In that steam, faces looked like masks. Later, I wasn't sure if I imagined it, but I think someone next to me spoke English. Maybe a man named Derek. Because when cities burn, languages blend into the sound of breathing. At the Binnenalster, people sat at the water's edge, some waist-deep, cooling their lungs. I soaked my cloth again. It came out instantly warm. Mrs. Adler held her cat above the water. The cat was calm, those perfectly calm eyes in the middle of madness. "We'll call her Little Spark," she said, and laughed. A laughter that had nowhere to go. Above us, the sky flipped from orange to white to black, as if someone was turning the pages of a book about hell. I tried to calculate hours, but fire has no clock. It knows direction, toward you. It knows appetite, oxygen. Around 3 in the morning, I heard, or perhaps felt, a shift. Explosions grew farther apart. The roar became even, like a giant finally settling. People began to speak again, softly, one word at a time. "Is it over?" little Eric asked. When it's over, we'll hear the all-clear siren, right? I said, yes. I had no idea. We waited by the water. The corridors of fire withdrew eastward. Smoke still weighed heavy, but it no longer hunted us. We walked back, slow, step by step, toward our street, what was left of it. Dawn arrived like a shy nurse checking the world's pulse. Windows without glass, one chair standing upright in the middle of nothing, a cooking pot on the pavement, a silk scarf hanging from twisted rebar, tram rails glowing like bones. Our building was still standing, but the roof was gone. The attic, black as a bottomless well, the cellar, our ark, full of ash. On the bench lay a playing card, the ace of hearts. I stupidly put it in my pocket. Near the door hung my old coat. Inside it, a piece of bread I'd forgotten. Hard as stone, I still kept it. Friedrich. I turned. Otto stood in the street, waving, his face gray with ash, eyes red. You're here, he said. That was enough. We didn't ask about the others. Not yet. Names were heavy stones. We didn't know yet which stones the fire had taken. Those first hours after felt like walking on the bones of a city. Altona, Eimsbüttel, Hammerbrook. The words themselves were wounds. People searched for each other like letters in a burned book. The Red Cross handed out water. Fires still flared here and there, some dying, some reigniting. We pulled objects from the rubble, a child's photo, a porcelain cup, a tin of tobacco, a half-burned letter, proof that words can survive fire. Later I learned the official term, Operation Gomorrah, a multi-day bombing. That night, July 27th to 28th, 1943, was the heart of darkness. They spoke in numbers, thousands dead, temperatures that melted metal, winds that sucked oxygen from lungs. They said firestorm like it was meteorology. But I knew it was alive. I had heard it breathe. Everything afterward was the afterspeech, rescue, lists, the silence between new sirens. The city remained, but like a man who had lost his voice and had to learn how to whisper again. And we whispered for a long time. When someone asked, "Where were you that night?" I answered only, "In Hamburg." That sentence was enough. In Hamburg meant among fire, among those who learned to walk through air that wanted to eat them. Days later, I stood on Lombardsbrücke looking at the Alster. The water surface was calm, gentle ripples with no memory of what they had carried. It was a sunny day, one of those shameless Sunday mornings after tragedy. The boy we had saved sat on a rail, breaking dry bread. "Will they come again?" he asked. "Probably," I said. Truth was simple as a stone. He nodded as if he expected it and offered me a crumb. I took it. Sharing was the only answer I had left. That night, trying to sleep in the cellar because there was nowhere else, I listened to the city. It was quieter than ever, like after a quarrel that had taken everything. And then I realized something I have never forgotten. Cities are living beings. They have skin, roofs, bones, bridges, blood, rivers, lungs, parks, and canals. That night, someone ripped out a city's heart. All that remained was the rhythm of those who carried it inside themselves. I began writing, not for history. History always comes later, cold and exact, but for memory. Memory is never cold. I wrote siren, sand, phosphorus, doors that breathe, suction wind, bridge, water, cat's eyes, laughter with no place to go. I wrote names. Mrs. Adler, Otto, Herbeck, Eric, Derek. I added a question mark. Maybe I invented him. I wrote Little Spark, the cat who learned to swim in a city learning not to die. Some say a firestorm is only physics. Heat rises, air rushes to feed it, a hurricane of oxygen and ash is born. Fine, physics is truth. But my truth is different. A firestorm is the stomach of the world when it overeats hatred. And when it finally settles, hunger remains. Hunger for water, for voice, for a name that dares to be spoken again. So I repeat, I am Friedrich. I was in Hamburg that night. I wasn't braver than anyone else. I simply kept walking. I carried buckets of sand. I smothered small beasts of phosphorus. I watched the great beast of fire. I held a boy's hand as he learned to breathe through a cloth. I trusted water, and I was right. I survived. A banal word, but my only one. I still carry that ace of hearts in my pocket. It has no value. A common card, charred and fragile. When I touch it, I remember the sound, not the siren, not the blast, but the moment everything went silent and I heard my own breath. Proof that air still wanted us, even after we burned its face. At dawn, the first morning after, I found my notebook, still open on the table. The paper was speckled with ash. At the top of the page, I wrote, Hamburg, Night of July 28th, 1943. The city breathed fire, and we taught it how to breathe air again. If you ask me what it was like, I'll say it was hot like guilt, loud like a scream, and quiet like after tears. If you ask what we learned, I'll say the bravest act in the world is simple: breathe, step, find water, touch another name. And when I remember Mrs. Adler and her little spark, I see us sitting at the water's edge, sleeves wet, faces salted gray, sun rising over ruins casually as if the world had not burned. Someone asks, will it happen again? And I answer, maybe. As long as humans breathe, fire breathes. But we will return to the water. That is all. That is the story. That is the truth, as much as a human heart can bear. Thank you so much for watching this episode on Warfacts Hub. I hope you enjoyed diving into this fascinating moment in history. If you found this video informative and engaging, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories from the past. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Until next time, keep exploring history with us. See you in the next episode.